dat julle uitgekom het, die tyd uitgekoop het, deel te wees van die konferensie en deel te wees van hierdie tyd. Ek wil werklik aanmoedig om die hele reeks te kry, ek weet nie wat beskikbaar gaan wees nie, maar om die hele reeks te kry to get the entire series of this conference. Because I really believe that every session has built on the next session. And tomorrow morning, morgenoggend wil ek sleutels met julle deel. I'm going to give you 4 keys tomorrow morning. I'm going to share with you the 4 best sermons that Jesus ever preached tomorrow morning. And if you understand those principles or keys, you're going to need tonight and you're going to need the previous nights before this. So I want to encourage you, if it's possible, get that as whenever it's available, try to get that and listen to it as one series, because it's a journey that you will walk to the promised land, to victory, to freedom, to get out of that cycle where you've been in. I'm really excited what God has been doing in this ministry. I said to Luan here today, and those that were there at the breakfast this morning, that if there's not fruit in someone's life, we doubt whether they've got a calling or something upon them. And it's easy in this ministry to see that there's a calling upon this ministry because there's fruit. I've been here a year ago and I can see a difference. I can see a change. If it's been 10 years serving God, your life is still the same, something's wrong. Something is missing. I've been listening to sermons that I preached 10 years ago, and I thought, what is he saying? Who's that guy? He's really missing it completely. And it's a good thing because we're growing, we're progressing into new things and into deeper revelation. Same thing in this church. It's going and from place to place, and this is not the end. This is just the beginning of what God is doing and where He's taking you into the next season as a church that's here. Okay, amen. Thank you for being here, being part of what God is doing in Bethlehem at this moment. I believe Bethlehem is an important city in the history of Jesus. So, the ladies who live in Bethlehem, it's a good place. Not everyone can say that. Okay, it was a bit Salmon. Thank you, Father, for the night. Thank you, Lord, for your mercy and grace. And as this mercy is called mercy and grace, Father. Lord, I pray that you would come tonight and touch us and give us revelation. Help us to get to the other side. Help us to have a deeper understanding of your promises and your will and purpose of our lives. Even the city and even our nation. Help us to understand, God, what is your purpose and plan for our nation, South Africa. I pray that in Jesus' name, amen. I want you to write down the scriptures if it's possible. I want to run and go through a lot of scriptures to get somewhere, so you can write it down and maybe read it afterwards or when you have time. I want to start in the book of Romans chapter 12 verse 2. Romans 12 verse 2. It starts off and it's a scripture that's well known. It starts and says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then the second part that very few people read, he says, then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. So according to Romans chapter 12, it is impossible for us to understand God's plan if our mind is not renewed. Without a renewed mind, you cannot understand the will and plan that God has for your life. Only after your mind is renewed, you can understand His plan. So he starts off and says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Good, pleasing, and perfect will. So I want you to understand tonight that with the current mindset that we have, we cannot understand where God is going. Until our minds are renewed, we cannot understand God's will for Bethlehem, for the city. Until our mind is renewed, we can't understand God's plan for South Africa and for the world. So something needs to change, and it's not God. Something needs to change in us so that we can understand the plan and the will that God has for our lives. I want to quickly take you on a journey, and I want you to walk with me through the life of Israel through the desert. And I'm going to run with you. We're not going to walk through the desert, we're going to run through the desert quickly. I want you to turn your Bibles to the book of Exodus chapter 12, verse 1 to 2. Exodus chapter 12, verse 1 to 2. Now, I want you to understand tonight that the picture or the idea of Egypt represents a bondage or a cycle. That's what it represents. So when we speak about Egypt, Egypt is a picture of bondage. It is Israel that have been enslaved to work on Pharaoh's big projects. So Pharaoh had a plan for their lives, but they were in bondage in this plan that he had for their lives. A worldly plan, a worldly system, and he was using them only for his benefit. So that's what Egypt represented. It represented bondage. And tonight I want to, because we are talking about cycles in this conference, I want to say that the picture of Egypt is a cycle for us. Because as Israelites, they had a cycle every day, getting up, working, getting one meal a day, and sleeping. And somewhere in that was dying, that's all. There was nothing else. That was their cycle. That was their lives. And they were in bondage for 400 years. That's the only thing they knew, was bondage. Their children were born into bondage, born into slavery. That's the only thing that they didn't know anything else than still to be slaves. They knew how to be good slaves, that's it. Nothing else. They had no other idea or vision or achieve, just be a slave. Eat your meal, work, build Pharaoh's projects, and die. That's it. It was their dream. That was their idea of purpose in their lives. So in the book of Exodus chapter 12, verse 1 to 2, now I want to touch on a couple of things as we go through this. One of the things is that I believe that you know this, they've tracked that journey, the journey from Egypt to the promised land that God has promised them, and they've tracked that journey, and that journey is a journey of 11 days. If you walk from Egypt to the promised land, it's exactly 11 days to get there. But it's an 11-day journey that quickly has turned into a 40-year journey. Something changed, something happened, and there's a reason I want to get to that. I want you to understand tonight that if you don't exit the cycle of your life, that you can get stuck into that cycle for a life period. A cycle that was supposed to take 11 days can take 40 years. You can walk 40 years, and that's the entire lifetime with a cycle, and not exit that cycle. That's why I'm addressing that, I'm speaking about that cycle to help you to understand that it's God's plan for you to get out of that cycle, to leave that cycle. And during this conference we're speaking about these cycles, and I believe you've been set free, but something needs to change. If you go back exactly the way you came to this conference, you know exactly to where that route is leading. Jy weet presies daai spore as jy volg, jy weet waar dit teruggaan. And as jy dit terug gaan, you're just going to get stuck into that cycle until next year's Break the Cycle 2 conference. And it's not God's plan. I don't believe it's Luan Yolandi's plan for you to come back here to get a follow-up of this conference. We want to see victory in your life. We want to see God's fruit and His blessings in your life. So in the book of Exodus chapter 12 verse 1 to 2, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, this month is to be for you the first month of your year. Now I want to make a statement tonight, and I want you to understand that God can change your cycle at any time. God can change your year, your calendar at any time. There's a set calendar from January to December, and then God steps into that calendar and God says to Moses, listen Moses, your calendar is about to start now. Forget about what month it is. It might be November, but this is going to be January for you. Your new season is about to start now. And He's saying to Moses, write down this date, because your journey is starting now. Your season is starting now. I want you to understand that in the spiritual world that we are not connected to winter and summer in the natural. We can go through winter in the natural, yet we can experience summer in our spiritual lives. Yet we can be in a completely different season. And God has the power to change that at any time. At any moment, at any time, God can set you free of that cycle. At any moment, God can release you from that. But when He releases you, you have to respond. So God steps into their life now, and He says to Moses and Aaron, this day is your first day. But now they have to respond. They have to do something about it. God just told them that they're going to leave Egypt now. A new season is starting. Yet, there's still no sign of freedom. There's still no sign of, of a promised land. They're still slaves. But within that circumstance, God comes and says, it's about to start now. Your season is changing now. And I want to speak to you concerning that, because I believe during this conference, somewhere during this conference, God came and He said to you, the cycle has been broken. The cycle is over. It is done. Yet, without the renewed mind, you still think about old circumstances. You're still thinking of your bank balance. You're still thinking about, it's November and you still have bills that you need to pay. That's what your mind is saying. Yet in the spirit, God said things are about to change now. But in your mind, you still have Pharaoh. Pharaoh hasn't received the letter yet. He knows nothing about it. You still have to face him. You still have to face the bank. You still have to face circumstances. You still have some debt. You still have some family. They don't know nothing about it. God spoke to you and said, the cycle is broken over your life. I believe that last night, as Vessel spoke about, as he said, the cycle is broken. I believe the cycle was broken. We are set free. But now, everything needs to respond. Now, my mind first needs to respond before circumstances can respond. The change needs to come within my mindset before circumstances can adapt to my life. So something needs to change here. The way I think, the way I plan needs to change. I believe last night was a moment of a cycle that changed. But you have to think and dream about the new season. The new season. What is the next plan? When a cycle is broken, you cannot go or plan according to the old ways. You can't plan the way that you've planned up until now. You cannot think the way you think up until now. When the cycle has been broken, you have to think in a new way. And the only way, listen, how you can understand God's plan and purpose is for your mind to be renewed. That's what we read in Romans. Only when our minds are renewed, then we can understand His will and His purpose. Okay? So, He says to them, this day is... this month will be the first month of your year. Now, this is chapter 12. Exodus chapter 12. Now, in chapter 11, we don't have time to go through that. The chapter before that is when the plagues came. All the plagues started to happen. Just the chapter before that, just before God told them that things are about to change. Now, I want to touch on something quickly tonight and help you understand that through all the plagues that happened, it wasn't the plagues that changed Pharaoh's mind. The plagues just made him angry. Every time when a plague came, he stood up and he was more harsh on the Israelites. He extended their hours. He took more privileges away. Just they had 1 meal a day, so he halved that. He took more away from them. But throughout the plagues, there was one thing. There was one plague. There was one thing that made him change his mind. And that was the blood of the firstborn. That was what changed his mind. The blood of the firstborn. Now when that happened, God gave Israelites instruction. He said to them, I want you to paint the blood of the Lamb on all your posts. And when the angel of death comes, he will pass you by and he won't touch your house. So it was because of the blood of the firstborn that Pharaoh's mind was renewed or changed. Okay? It is only by the blood of the Lamb, it's only by the cross that our minds can be renewed. Our minds are not renewed through doctrines or disciplines or meditation or religion. Our minds are renewed because of the blood of the cross. The cross that puts that in motion so that our minds can be renewed so we can understand God's will and purpose for our lives. So in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 36, let's start from 12, verse 31, a couple of verses before that. Exodus 12, verse 31. It says, during the night Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, up and leave my people, you and the Israelites go. Worship the Lord as you requested. Take your flocks and herds as you have said, and go, and also bless me. So Pharaoh says to them, he calls in the middle of the night, just after the firstborn had died, and he calls them and says, listen, take your things and leave. Get them together. Tomorrow morning, when the sun rises, I want you off my land. I want you to leave. It's done. But before you go, bless me. It's amazing, a nation that's been enslaved for 400 years. Pharaoh, they looked at Pharaoh as a god. That's what they looked at him. And suddenly he turns to a nation of people in bondage. And he looks at them and says, leave it. Before you leave, bless me. Do something for me. The same people who he enslaved, who he's been torturing and been humiliating every day. He looks at a king, a god in their eyes. Looks at them and says, just bless me before you leave. Just bless me before you go. Now I want to say to you prophetically tonight that the season that God is setting you free from, that season will call out your name and say, leave, but before you leave, bless me. Speak a word into my life. Just bless me before you go. I've been dormant in your life, but now I see God's anointing and favor upon your life. So bless me before you go. Because whatever you say will happen, I can see that you have a God that's on your side and that's with you. So in Exodus chapter 12, verse 36, it says, the Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, and they gave them what they asked for, so they plundered the Egyptians. So just before Israel left, the Egyptian people blessed them physically. Pharaoh asked for a blessing on him, but the Egyptian people themselves, as they left, they said, listen, we want to sow into your lives. You can have whatever you want. And they left with as much gold and silver than they can carry. That's what they left. In the book of Psalms, it refers to the scripture in the book of Psalms 105 verse 37. It says, the Lord brought his people out of Egypt, loaded with silver and gold. So when God set them free, you have to get this, when God breaks the cycle, He blesses you with everything that you need for the next season. Everything that needs to be part of that next season, when that cycle is being broken. There's very few of you that really realizes what happened last night, what happened yesterday. When that cycle was broken, the blessing was restored. The blessing, whatever Satan stole from you, is not going to be restored the next couple of years. When the cycle was broken, the blessing was restored. The blessing was released back upon your life when the cycle was broken. Now, something still needs to change within you and within Israel. Because now, I think they get up that morning and they're full of shock. Because suddenly, Pharaoh calls them and says, listen, for 400 years, you wouldn't let them go anywhere. And now he says to them, listen, you need to get off the land right now. And we're going to give you whatever you need to leave. He pays them to leave. He gives them silver and gold and tells them, okay, go. So I think the Egyptians, or the Israelites, they leave Egypt and they don't understand what's happening right now. They think this is a trick or this is a setup. Why are they doing this? Why are they giving them all these things? You need to understand that as an Israelite, during that time of bondage, they were not allowed to own any possession. They didn't have the right to ownership of anything. They had no ownership of nothing. Even their lives didn't belong to themselves. They were the possessions of the Egyptians. The Egyptians had the authority to do whatever they wanted to do with them. They had nothing. They couldn't say, this is my house, or this is my shoes, or this is my... Everything belonged to Egypt. And now they're leaving with all these possessions, and they don't know what ownership means. They don't know what it means to have a blessing or to carry a blessing upon themselves. Now, in Exodus chapter 13, verse 21, it says, by the day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. The book of Exodus chapter 14 verse 2, I'm going to continue to read a couple of chapters. It says, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, but I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army. Now, just before that, when they left the land, he said that even though the road was shorter to travel, he said that he didn't lead them on the shorter route because they were not ready for war yet. He said if he would have led them on the shorter route, they would have encountered enemies along the way, and they would have returned to Egypt. They would have gone back. They were not ready for war yet at this moment. That's why he started to take them on this journey. So he says that God, not the enemy, he says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. So Pharaoh, who just had a transformation or renewal of his mind, let them go, blessed them, and while he's sitting there, suddenly bitterness or his heart is being hardened against them. And it's not the enemy, it's not Satan, it's God that's doing it. And God is saying that, he says, I will gain glory through his army. I will use his army for my glory and for my purpose. I want you to understand tonight that whenever something attacks you, whenever something comes up against you, that God will use that for his glory. He will use that situation, he will use that bad or negative report, and at the end of the day it will be for his glory when you receive that breakthrough. So he says, now will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, but I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army. The book of Exodus chapter 14 verse 11, they said to Moses, just after they left, they said to Moses, was it because there were no grapes in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Now I'm going to show you a picture. I said I'd like to make the box. I'm going to show you a picture to this place where everything is happening. This is a real life place of right now, of mission and that place. So this is the place where they ended up at the Red Sea. So what is happening here is, I would like to explain this to you, that through the mountains here is a valley that Israel came through. And then as they came through to this valley, they end up in this beach right here. And now from the air, it's difficult to see, but this beach is surrounded by mountains on both sides. When you enter this beach, there's no way to go right or no way to get left. That's it. The only way in is that valley. It's the only way to get in. The only way to get out is that valley. Why don't you show me the second picture? This is a picture. I went to this place in Israel, exactly where this happened. So this is, they were there also. Did you hear? Yeah. So this is from the view from the ocean. So on the right side here, the mountains comes along, and on the left side here. So something is happening as they get onto this beach. On this beach, we have 600,000 men. Okay? They didn't count the women or the children. 600,000 men. Okay? The chariots that was sent by Pharaoh to chase them was 600. Okay? So we have 600 chariots that's coming through this valley to chase them, 600, to chase a group of 600,000 men. And this 600,000 men are trembling in fear. Because the only thing that they know is to be a slave. They don't know how to fight. They don't realize that 600,000 completely outnumbers 600. Completely. They don't realize that. The only thing that they're thinking is we're going to die. That's it. It's the end of us. They're not realizing, or their mind, they're not comprehending that the problem is not as big as they think it is. You know, if 600,000 men turn against an army of 600 chariots, they're definitely going to win. There's no way. I want to make a statement tonight. I want to say to you, how many spiders does it take to scare you? Just one, right? Jy kort nie 10. You don't need 10 spiders to scare you. One scares you. Okay? One spider scares you. Now, the enemy, in a cycle, the enemy doesn't have to give you 10 bad reports. Just have to give you one. But the key is that whenever you have overcome the one, you've overcome everyone. If one spider can scare you, 10 spiders can scare you. You've overcome that thing. So the enemy is using a cycle of one thing, the same thing, over and over and over, same thing. He doesn't have to do more and more and more in your life, just using the same back and forth, the same challenge, the same cycle. This is one same thing. And this is what's happening with Israel right here. It's not a big army. It's not Pharaoh's massive army that's chasing them. It's 600 chariots. That's it. But the only thing that they're thinking is fear, and fear is busy destroying their lives. Because of fear, they're missing the purpose that God has for their lives, missing the plan that God has for them. Now I want to share something with you tonight. I want you to understand something. As Israelites here, they're walking with Israelites. They're walking with Moses. They're walking with Aaron at this moment. Now I want to say to you this morning, who did God call you, or tonight, who did God call you to walk with? If you would have been called to walk with the Egyptians, you would have been one. Who did God call you to walk with? And I want to say to you tonight that God called you to walk with the people that surround you. All of us are sitting here and you're thinking that, I want to be part of that. I want to walk with that person. I want to be part of that nation. I want to be here. I want to be there. Well, if God wanted you to walk with them, He would have. Even in relationships, even in friendships. I want you to understand that the friends, the people that you have around you right now, is the people that God called you to walk with. That's why I placed them in your life. You're thinking in relationships or in marriage, you're thinking, yes, it would be great to be with that woman, but you don't realize that God has placed this woman next to you to walk with. Okay? Same thing with men. You're thinking, well, yes, that would be a great husband, but you don't realize that God has placed this person in your life. And this is the person that you're supposed to walk that journey with. I'm not talking about cultures or traditions or things like that. I'm talking about spiritual relationships and people that God is connecting us with. God wants you to walk with Israel, and Israel's walking with Israel. They're walking with Moses at this moment. Even though they're thinking, it would have been so much better to be in Egypt right now, they're not in Egypt. They're right there in the desert, and they're walking with their people because God has called them to walk with these people. I want to continue. What happens is, at that moment, in Exodus chapter 14, verse 15, then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. I will cause them to pursue you." Now, I want you to understand tonight that sometimes, as for Israel, they're ending on that beach, and to them it's the end. They're standing on that beach and they're thinking, this is it. We crossed the desert, went through all the difficulty to get to this place to die. The only thing that they see is mountains on the right, mountains on the left, and a sea in front of them. That's it. There's no way out. And 600 chariots behind them. That's it. There's no way of going anywhere else. And often, when a cycle is ending in your life, you find yourself in that spot, in that position, where you're thinking, oh, this is it. There's no way out of this situation. There's no way forward, there's no way backwards, there's just nothing that I can do. But you're not realizing that God is busy pushing you from behind. You know, if there's not a fire, He's creating a little fire. God is, at this moment, He's putting the Egyptians behind them to give them a little bit of motivation. Just to help them a little bit, to push them a little bit forward. Because they're standing in front of the sea and they're just thinking, it's impossible. There's no way, it's the end. But, you know, if the Egyptians were not behind them, they would have camped right there for 40 years. They would have just stayed there. Nothing would have changed. But suddenly, they have to make a quality decision. Not tomorrow, in 5 minutes. They have to choose. They have to decide what are they going to do. Are they going to move on? Are they going to forward? And immediately, the instinct is to complain. Immediately, they first complain to Moses and Aaron and say, no, it's all your fault. We told you we don't want to come. Again, it's your fault. And they say to Moses, go and speak to God. And Moses cries out to God. But Moses says, Lord, what's happening? God responds. And he's saying, why are you crying out to me? Move on. Move on. Don't stop. Move on. Part of being set free of the cycle that you're stuck in means that you're going to need to make some quality decisions tomorrow. Some quality decisions on Monday. There's some decisions that can't wait any longer. You're going to have to choose. You're going to have to make a decision. You have to say, okay, well, we're going to die here, or we're going to move forward. And if you don't make that decision, God will put a little bit of motivation in your life. Suddenly the letter has a deadline on it. It says you have time until then to respond. Because you have to make a decision. You have to decide. You have to make a quality choice. I'm sharing this with you tonight because I want to encourage you to make that decision. Because the decision that you think you're going to make, you think is going to cause havoc or destruction in your life, but actually that decision is going to birth the new season, the new cycle. As soon as you make that decision, as soon as you say, yes, Lord, as soon as you respond, then something's set into motion. Then something doors opening. But until you make that decision, nothing is going to happen. You know, God speaks to Moses, and part of what He's saying to him, He's saying, I want you to take action. God was not saying, well, okay, look on your left, the water is slipping a little bit apart, and this is what I'm about to do. No, God is saying, okay, I want you to take action. I want you to respond. Do this. Act as if this is where we're going. Now, as the Israelites, you know, there's 600,000 of them there. They've got, the guys at the back have no clue what's happening in the front. No idea. They just see Moses standing up and he's lifting, you know, he's doing something in front. It looks like we're going. So they don't know where, but it looks like all of us are moving. It always takes one person to respond and move for the rest to respond to their new season. And this one, I'm sharing this with you tonight because as you respond to the new season that God has for you, suddenly your family and people around you respond. They just follow. They have no idea what's happening, or they just see, well, there's movement. They don't know what the plan is, but we're going somewhere. We don't know. You know, the guys in the back, they don't even know that there's an ocean in front of them. 600,000. It's no clue what's in front of them. They think that, well, it's just a desert or a bridge and we're going to walk over it now. They have no idea. I think the guys, whoever crossed the Red Sea last, they got the revelation last. By the time they got it, the miracle was over. Like, what just happened? They had no idea. But they responded, and one breakthrough touched 600,000 of them, because someone responded to that. So in the book of Exodus, chapter 16, verse 4, they move on, and they see these miracles or experience breakthrough in their lives, but because they don't have a renewed mind, they have to live from breakthrough to breakthrough to breakthrough. If you have a renewed mind, you don't live from breakthrough to breakthrough. You live in abundance. So this moment, they're just living from day to day, from miracle to miracle, and that's it. But they're still doubting. They're still worrying. They're still complaining. They still have no idea. And slowly, God has to build their faith, and He has to restore them. So, in the book of Exodus chapter 16 verse 4, it says, Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. God is saying to them, saying, okay Moses, I'm going to teach you as a nation to be dependent on me, to have faith in me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rain down supplies from heaven every day. And in that day, you can eat as much as you want. But you're not allowed to store for the next day. You see, as a slave mentality, they have a mentality to store up. They're thinking, I don't know what happened with them in Egypt. They're thinking, well, there's a celebration once a year for us slaves, and this is it. We have to, lick and take whatever we can get out of this celebration, and it's only coming next year. Imagine how difficult it must have been for those slaves. So suddenly there's abundance. They've got access to something that they never had access to. And Moses tells them, well, you're allowed to enjoy as much as you want, but you're not allowed to store any of it. You can't put anything. And they have to learn suddenly to live in faith and trust God day by day by day by day. I want to share something with you tonight. I want to help you to live a life of abundance. A saving mentality is a poverty mentality. Telling the truth. A saving mentality is a poverty mentality. Because we're thinking God will only provide once. It's not coming again. This is it. Now, I'm not going to share. I'm not going to be a blessing to anyone else. No, I just need to take care of myself, my family, and this is it. So imagine in Egypt, God is saying to them, that's exactly where you are right now. Imagine God says to you, listen, you can enjoy everything that I've placed in your life every day, but you're not allowed to keep anything for the next day. It's the only way we learn or have a mentality of abundance. Even though we think we are free, we still have a poverty mindset that's keeping us back. Where we're thinking that, well, this is not coming again. This is this moment. Now I have to be careful with what I have. And God is saying, no, I want you to be dependent on me, not on the bank, not on this investment or that investment. I'm not saying God doesn't want you to have investment or be blessed at all. I'm saying God wants us to be totally dependent on Him. Totally dependent on Him. Not on those things. There's many people, maybe no one here tonight, but they live their lives and they're fully dependent on that. That is their security. Not God. They're in church on Sundays and they celebrate God and they honor Him with their mouths, but their dependency is on that thing, on that place. And I'm sharing this with you out of a testimony, out of a place in our own lives where God started to speak to us about that place of dependency. We had this sacred place that we protected and we stored up for emergencies. This plan B. This back door if God doesn't work. Really? This place, just if God forgets it, He doesn't show us up. We had this back door that no one knew about. A couple of 100,000 was put away. No one knew. Just for that moment when God disappears. We have that. And then one morning in the Holy of Holies, the Lord spoke to me about that place. In the place of complete surrenderance. He said, what is that? Lord, it's, I call it plan B. Lord, it's just those days when you're busy. That's what that is. And we have to learn, and I'm using this as an example, but in your own personal life, there can be these plan Bs and Cs and Ds that's out there. And the main purpose of those things is just if God doesn't keep His word. We're not saying it, we're not proclaiming it. It's just a safe place. As if that place is safer than being dependent upon Him. There's a place of abundance where God wants to put you that's far more safer than any treasure or anything that you store up on earth. Anything. Yet we put our security and trust in that place, in that area. I want to continue. I don't want to upset people. So I'll move on. I'll move on. You say to them, move on. Move on. In Exodus chapter 16 verse 4, He speaks to them. He says, only for that day. Now in the book of Exodus chapter 20 verse 2, suddenly God gets them together and He says to Moses, He says, I'm going to give you a couple of commands, laws that I want you to give them. I'm going to write down, I'm going to give you these commands, I want you to write them down. I want you to represent them to Israel. And I'm sharing this with you tonight, and I'm sharing this journey with you, because I want you to understand, and I want your mind to be renewed, why these laws was put into place. So God gives the laws to Moses, and then He calls in Israel, and Moses says, listen, God spoke to me, and He said, I need to share these things with you. And the first law that God gave him, He says, first thing is, He says, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt and out of the land of slavery. He says, this is the first command that I want you to remember. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of slavery. Nothing else. I'm the Lord your God who saved you. And I'm giving you a command today in remembering this. Whatever you're doing and whatever you're pursuing in your life, you can pursue anything, but remember, I brought you out. Not those things. It wasn't that deal or that person or that. I brought you out of slavery. I put you in a position to gain wealth. Nothing else. I put you in a position. This is the first command that I want you to remember. Never forget that, Israel. I brought you out of the land of slavery. Number one. Number two, remember the Sabbath. And the reason why I'm saying to them, remember the Sabbath, so He gives them one day a week to rest, because Israel, under 400 years under bondage, they don't know what rest is. You know, under Pharaoh's rule, they didn't have a off day. They didn't have a free day just to relax. So God comes and says, I'm going to give you a command now. And the command that I'm giving you, Israel, is I want to give you one day a week off, and I want you to rest. And when you rest that day, I want you to remember me. I want you to rest. Imagine for 600,000 men, and then women and children, all of them, suddenly, they don't know how to rest. They've been slaves. They know how to work, you know. That's all they know. Now suddenly Moses said, okay, well, from now on, once a week, I want you just to relax. I think they're like, Moses, what does it mean? What is relax? What do you do if you relax? Just sit. How can we just sit? No? But while you're sitting, remember God. Remember what He has done for you. Think. So He's saying, once a week, regularly, renew your mind in what God has done in your life. Because if you don't think about it, your thought process will just go back to the old ways. Just go back into slavery. You will have no idea how to work or how to, with these possessions and gold and silver and everything that you have now. Then He says, okay, I'm going to give you the third command. The third command is, I want you to honor your father and mother. You know, as families, they were broken up. There was no meaning in families. They were all slaves. You know, the father wasn't a higher or lower slave, they were slaves. My father was the same guy, you know, who picked up the brick with me than the other guy on the left-hand side that I didn't know. Same person, we were all equal, we were all slaves. Now God is coming and says, no, I want to restore honor to you, families. I want you to honor your mothers and fathers. Because for them as slaves, the only way for them to learn to honor God is to honor man. They will never know how to honor God if they don't know or learn to honor each other. And then God speaks to him and he says, okay, the next thing is you shall not murder. Now to us, you know, in South Africa or where we were born, it is normal to us that we're thinking, of course you shouldn't murder. But to them, it was normal. You know, their lives were the possessions of the Egyptians. Their lives had no meaning. No meaning. You know, the Egyptians killed them for fun. It was fun to kill them. So suddenly, God comes and speaks to them as a nation, and He's saying to them, listen, I don't want you to murder. Because they've been seeing that every day. They have no sense of self-worth. They have no sense of identity. They have no sense of belonging or they never had anything. There was no value. Now God is saying, well, what happened to you in Egypt, that wasn't right. I want you to know that I don't want you to murder. Don't do that. That's not right. And to them it's a revelation. They don't understand it. They have to learn suddenly that my life has meaning. My life has purpose. How do you share a purpose or a plan with an individual that believes that their life doesn't have any meaning? It's impossible for them to understand purpose because they think that their purpose is to live, work and die. There's nothing else, there's no other purpose to my life. But God is preparing them for a place that He wants to take them. And then He's saying, the next one is saying, you shall not commit adultery. Why? Because their wives belonged to the Egyptians. Their wives were not their own. Their husbands belonged to the Egyptians. There was no covenant or anything among slaves. Nothing. They didn't have to fight for that. The Egyptians could take or use or abuse their wives at any time they wanted to. They had access to everyone. And now God speaks to them as a nation and saying, listen, I don't want you to, I don't want any adultery among you. I don't want that. And He's busy renewing their minds. He's busy making them human again. Because when they left Egypt as animals, they had no sense of life. And God is busy restoring to them life. He's busy restoring to them the image that they were created in, the purpose, the plan. And they can't understand that if they don't have a self, identity or self-worth or understand covenant or relationships or those things. So God has to explain to them as a child, listen, I don't want you to murder, that's not right. You've seen it every day, but I don't want you to kill each other. Now with husband and wives, come on, I don't want you to do that. Leave and your friend's wife alone. I don't want you to do that. That's not right. And I think why the Egyptians, this is what they portrayed. That's what we saw every day. And God's saying, no. I don't want you to live that way. And then He comes and He says, you shall not steal. And God's sharing with them, I want you to have a sense of ownership. That whatever you left Egypt with, and whatever I'm about to restore in your life, I want you to have a sense of ownership and proudness over that. It is not okay to steal your neighbor's possessions. Because they didn't have closets where they stored up their things. Whatever was on the ground was everyone's. They couldn't say that's mine. No. As a slave, they had no ownership of nothing. They couldn't say it belonged to me. They had no right. They didn't have any rights. So God is busy restoring them for the place that He wants to take them. Now I want you to understand this because everything that's happening here in the life of Israel is God is taking them to the promised land. But if God lets them enter the promised land right after Egypt, they'll destroy it. They have no accountability, they have no responsibility, they will mess everything up. So God has to restore them, God has to change them, He has to renew them, so that they can walk into the promised land, so that they can possess and access the blessings that God has for them. And right now, in their lives, they are delaying God's purpose and plan for them because of their behavior, because of their renewed mind. Their mind needs to be renewed so that they can access what God has already provided or restored for them. I want to explain something to you tonight. In the book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 17, it says, I've promised to rescue you from your oppression in Egypt, and I will lead you to a land flowing with milk and honey. The land where the Canaanites, and he calls all the tribes that's living there. It's called the Promised Land. I want to explain to you something tonight. So, right here in this corner, we have the Promised Land. The Promised Land. The land is connected to the promise. The land. Die land is die beloofde land. Die land is gekoppel aan die belofte. It is the promised land because of the promise. The land cannot move, the promise cannot move, but they can. The promise is fixed. It's there. It's a promised land. So we have Israel right here on this side. The promise is fixed. It's there. It can't move, it can't change. It is connected to that land. There's been a promise over that land. That's it. The land can't move, they can move. And they have to move into the promise. The promise is fixed. They're thinking, and you're thinking, well, the promise needs to change. But you don't realize that the promise is fixed. It's set. But it is the journey that helps you to understand the promise. It is the journey that causes you to have understanding of the promised land. So there's a place that God has prepared for you. You need to get this tonight. When the prophetic word went out, when the promise went out, the prophetic word is connected to the land, to the place. It is there, it's fixed. It's unmovable, unchangeable. It is connected. The promised land is a promised land because there's a promise connected to it. That's what made it a promised land. It's unchangeable. But God needs to steer us and move us and renew us to walk into and to possess the promise. The land cannot move into your direction. The promise is fixed. It's geographically fixed. You have to move and respond to the promise. Until you access the promised land, you're not possessing the promise. You have to get this tonight. There's a promise connected to this ministry. There's a promise that God gave this ministry. There's a covenant, there's a blessing that's been spoken of this ministry. And the ministry or the church can't move into the promise. It is the people, the building, the ground can't move into us. We have to move into it. Okay? Are you with me? Okay? So there's a promise that God has spoken over Bethlehem. There's a blessing that God spoke over this region. So there's a promise that's connected to this region. And this region is not going to move into your life. We have to move into what God spoke over the promised land. That's when we benefit or we have access to what God said. So the promise that God gave you, the things that He spoke of your life, the things that He shared with you in Scripture, it's a done deal, it's set geographically, it's set there. But now there's a process. There's a renewal process where God needs to renew your mind to access that promise, to walk in that abundance. The abundance is not changing. It's fixed. Something has to change, and it's not God. There's a change that needs to happen here, within us, so that we can possess the blessings and the purpose that God has for us. We try to explain to you something. If a million rand shows up into your account tonight, you get a text or however it happens, and you see $1 million, you're going to be questioned. You're going to say, where did this come from? You're going to phone the bank tomorrow morning and find out, where does this come from? That's your response. Okay? When $1 million rand shows up in Donald Trump's account, he's going to ask, where's the rest? His mind is renewed on that level. Now, he's not going to question it. He wants to know where's the rest of the money. This is only a part of it. Okay? So there's a renewal coming. So if God was leading Bethlehem through Egypt, you would have gotten to this place where God would have said to Bethlehem, He would have said, listen Bethlehem, I want to give you a couple of commands. But the first command that I want to give you is, I want you to have at least $1 million in your bank account. Why? Because your mind says it's impossible. Israel had the mindset of, we don't understand these things. We don't know what it is to own anything. So God is speaking to you. You need to understand that these commandments, honor these commands. But these commands are applicable to Israel's life as they were led out of Egypt. It doesn't help if I say to you tonight that, listen, you need to honor God. You're supposed to know that. If I say to you, as a nation, if I say to you, listen, adultery is not right. You're supposed to know that. It's normal, you're supposed to know that. But it's not those things, it's the things that you're not knowing. So we are focusing all our energy and focus on these commandments and trying to figure it out. Yet God is saying, listen, your journey is to a completely different place. The word law in Hebrew means journey. That's what the word law means. So when Moses called the Israelites together and said, listen, I'm going to explain the law to you right now. He said to them, listen, I'm going to share the journey with you. What's supposed to happen within the next 10 or 20 years, I'm going to share with you right now. So right now, you don't have understanding maybe of these things, but we're going to grow and we're going to walk through the desert until we understand these things. We are not going to access or enter the promised land until we understand it. We're going to walk past it, we're never going to enter it until we have a revelation of these things that He shared. Now I'm speaking to you about these things because as God is leading Israel, we are led by the Holy Spirit. So there's things that the Holy Spirit is talking to you about. And the Holy Spirit is saying your own personal life, He's saying, listen, you need to renew your mind in this area. And you're thinking, no, that's not really important, but you don't realize that that is the key to your breakthrough. That is what's going to help you to access or to renew your mind to understand God's will and plan for your life. And we're all different. We're all at different places. There's people here that needs to be set free from on a financial level. Other people in relationships. Other people on sickness. And we're all at different levels. But the Spirit of the Lord is leading all of us and saying, listen, this is important to your life. You need to get a revelation of this. You need to grow into this area so that you can understand what God wants to do, how to access the promised land or the place that God has prepared for your life. If I do an altar call tonight and I say, how many of you, don't respond, but if I say, how many of you want to receive a car? There's going to be a lot of hands going to go up. And if I say, how many of you wants to be blessed, or how many of you want to receive $1 million as a gift? There can be many hands. How many of you wants to receive a house? How many of you wants to be blessed with a house? Someone comes and bless you with a house, or say, listen, whatever the debt is on your property, I'm paying it off. There's going to be many hands that's going to come up, definitely. But I want to renew your mind tonight. And I want to say, how many of you want to give $1 million? How many of you want to sow a car? How many of you want to pay off someone else's property? You know, in Egypt, they wanted to receive. But in the promised land, they wanted to give. In Egypt, there was limited resources. They had to save. They had to put things away, and they had to live carefully with what they had. But in the promised land, there were abundance. They didn't have to store up. There were more than enough. Everything that they needed was there. Now, in our minds, we have to move, and God has to renew our minds from a place of Egypt to a place of the promised land. That place. That's why I'm saying that we have to respond differently. Instead of thinking, immediately if I say he wants to receive, that's a poverty mentality. I'm sharing with you because I'm so when someone said it, I was the first one who jumped up and says, yes, here I am. And then the Lord started speaking about abundance. And he said, you don't understand abundance. You see, you don't understand what you have access to already. You're just thinking of personal gain. You're just thinking of enriching yourself. And I want you to realize what you have access to. And instead of saying, give, have a mentality of saying, God, who can I bless? I want to be a blessing to us. You see, the person that receives a house only have one. But the one who gives have multiple houses. Because to be in a position of giving you must have another one. There must be abundance in there. There must be more enough. The problem with Israel, as they left Egypt in a journey that was supposed to take 11 days, that took 40 years, is because Israel left Egypt, but Egypt never left them. So even in the desert, they're still living with a poverty mentality. And God has to take them through this journey. I can take you to scripture. The entire journey, He constantly has to explain to them. There's things that God does. There's texts that they're writing, and God is helping them to understand abundance. They listen. They're living from breakthrough to breakthrough to breakthrough. It's a poverty mentality. We have many Christians today that's living from miracle to miracle to miracle. It's a poverty mentality. It is a mentality that it is only for a certain moment of time. It's a mentality of that have access to something that can dry up. It can stop. But a mentality of abundance gives me the peace that it can stop. I have access to that. And that's the things that I'm going to speak to you about tomorrow. I'm going to speak to you about the life that Jesus lived and the way that He thought. I'm going to show you the thought process of Jesus, the way He responds. He thinks from a different place. He responds from a different place. He prays from a different place. He functions on earth from a different place. Not from lack. Not from poverty. We have Christians today, and you need to understand that being a Christian doesn't mean that you're living a life of abundance. Let me tell you, we have more Christians today that's living in poverty than people that's lost. Telling the truth. Okay? Let me push you a little bit further. Let me say to you something tonight. God does not determine the flow of money in and out of your life. Your revelation of money determines that. Why? Because He died on the cross for us. When He died on the cross, He didn't exclude something. He didn't die on the cross in dates and dimes. He didn't give a leg in 2000 and then there was one price that he paid. One moment, really. One thing. I want to make another statement. I want to say to you that God does not determine the flow of miracles in and out of our lives. Our revelation of miracles determines that. That's why I say to you, if a million shows up in your bank account, you're going to say, wow, what happened? Let me tell you what you're really going to say. If a million shows up in your bank account, you're going to phone someone and you're going to say, jy sal nie glo wat my gebeur het. That's what you're going to say. You're going to phone someone and say, you won't believe what happened with me today. The majority of us that's here tonight, I believe that you came here by some sort of transport. And you're sitting here in this meeting right now, and you're not sweating and worrying and thinking, Lord, I just pray that as I leave this meeting that my car is going to start. No. You're going to leave this meeting tonight, you're going to get into your car, you're going to start it, and you have the expectation for it to respond. If your car doesn't respond, you're going to be shocked and amazed, and you're going to get out, you're going to think, what's wrong? You're going to open up the bonnet, you're going to think, but why is it not responding? Even though the day when you bought that car, they told you that there's a limited warranty on this car. When you bought it, you signed a document that said, listen, it's going to break. They told you it's not everlasting. At some point, it's going to break. Yet, in faith, we don't have that same expectation in God's promises. We're not expecting it. We're not expecting abundance. And God has to renew our minds so we can understand His plan. And that mind is renewed by the cross. That's how it should be, the blood of the cross. It was the blood that changed Pharaoh's mind. It is the blood of the cross that helps us to renew our minds to understand what we have access to, what God has put upon our lives. We're praying and pleading for things that God has already done. I want to say to you something tonight. I want you to understand something tonight. The first time when God spoke, He didn't spoke to communicate but to create. God didn't use His mouth to communicate. He used His mouth to create. And that is the same breath. That's the same potential that He gave us. Animals can speak. If you have a parrot that speaks, it's not supposed to. But animals don't speak. Okay. Humans train them to do that. That's not. Between everything and all creation that's out there, we have speech. We can speak. We can create. We can speak into situations. When I prophesy, I speak into a situation. When you speak, when you say things, that's why I said to you that when a million shows up in your account, the first thing you respond is you're going to say, it's impossible. We have to learn to respond to create. We're not supposed to respond when it happens, we're supposed to create before it happens. We're supposed to say to our neighbors, listen, there's a breakthrough that's coming tomorrow. There's a blessing that's on its way. God's going to do something. There's no help on the right, there's no help on the left. I don't know what we're going to do with the guys behind us, but God's going to do something. God's going to do something. Speak it into existence. Call it up. All the things that it's not as it is. Scripture might say, roep die dinge wat bestaan as wat nie staan. Call it up. Speak into those situations. When we speak, we are our words need to come into alignment with our minds. If I listen to a person's speech, I know where their mind is. If you listen to a person, the first two sentences they speak, you can know exactly where they're in their lives. Exactly. Why? Because they speak from that place. They speak, you can immediately, you know exactly what's happening in their finances. It's 2 sentences. So something needs to change. Our speech needs to change. The way we speak about things. You know, we have to act like Donald Trump. We have to expect it. We have to expect it. You know, a month ago, a couple took me and my wife out for dinner, and they asked us about a ministry, the ministry that we have in Mossel Bay, and they said, what's happening there? We want to sow into that ministry. What we're eating. They said, listen, we want to sow into that ministry. I said, no, great, thank you so much. And we continue to eat. And the guy said to me, he said, I thought you would have been more excited. I said, I am excited, but I was expecting it. Not a surprise. I'm expecting it. I'm expecting a breakthrough to come. I am excited. Sorry that I'm not jumping up and that, but I'm expecting it. 3 years ago, God said He's going to give us a breakthrough. So I've been expecting it. I've been expecting for 3 years that breakthrough to come. I've been waiting for it to be manifested. I'm sharing this with you tonight because you need to expect those promises God has given you. Don't let God's promises surprise you. Sal nie glo nie, ek sal glo. I believe that. I believe it's possible. We believe in miracles. We believe in abundance. We believe in breakthroughs. But we're not living from breakthrough to breakthrough to breakthrough. A person that lives in abundance don't need breakthroughs. In John 10 verse 10, Jesus didn't come to bring life and breakthroughs. It's a poverty mindset that teach people to live from breakthrough to breakthrough to breakthrough. Now, what's the breakthrough that you need for this year? What are we trusting God for this year? It's a slave mentality. It's Israel that have that, Egypt that has got them in bondage, and there's one present a year, there's one breakthrough in the year, and the entire year they're working for this one promise, for this one breakthrough. It's a poverty mentality. As Christians and sons and daughters of God, we're living a life of abundance. Every day is a breakthrough. We constantly, it's not something, we don't have, I want to tell you the truth, we don't have dry seasons. We don't have winter. It is possible for you to spiritually enter a spiritual summer for the rest of your life. There's nothing holy about going through difficulty. It's not supposed to be like that. But people are expecting it. You see, as soon as people get a breakthrough, they're expecting whatever goes up must come down sometime. That's what they say. If I listen to them speaking, they're saying, well, it's going good right now, but 7 years, year of trial. We're expecting bad things to happen. We're expecting things to go wrong. I said to the group this morning, I said to them, it's interesting how people can curse their own land that they stand in. I'm not cursing the land. Okay, so what are you saying about the government? You're cursing their own soil, their own soil. It's like Israel that walks past Canaan, the promised land, and they're cursing it every day. God promised them. God said, I'm going to give you this land, full of milk and honey. And they're walking past it and they're cursing that land. But what they don't realize is that their own children need to grow up in that land. As a father, I can't afford to curse the land that my children have to grow up in. I don't want to leave them an inheritance, of their. I want to speak to the soil. I want to speak to this nation. I want to speak to the land. I want to speak to the city. Because there's a generation that will live after me that needs to grow up and to live in this place. The same land. A place that it's amazing because the spies, they're sending all the spies, and the majority of the spies are saying, it's impossible, we can't live there, we're not going to make it. And then two, Joshua and Caleb, they come back and they say, well, it is the promised land. And according to Exodus, according to Scripture, there are the only two that entered the promised land. Those that cursed it, those that said it's impossible, those that said it couldn't happen, they didn't access. The two that came back with a good report enjoyed the milk and honey. The same milk and honey that others cursed. I believe it is possible for God to bless you in the midst of chaos. In the midst of chaos in a nation. Let me try to explain to you God's mind. It's very difficult for a limited mind to explain an unlimited mind, but I'm going to try in a moment. When God looks at the world, He sees one nation. To God, there's no boundaries or nations or cultures. There's one nation. There's one kingdom. That's what God sees. God sees America connected to Africa. He sees Europe as part of Africa. We're excluding it. We say, no. This is where Africa is, and this is where America is. We say this is the economy of Africa, and this is the economy of America. We say this is where Switzerland's economy is, and not God's kingdom. God is saying it is one nation, it's a kingdom. And it's connected to that. It's connected to that place. I was in a gathering a couple of weeks ago in Ghana, and the Lord gave me a prophetic word. And I had the opportunity to speak to a lot of officials in Ghana, and I said to them the following thing. I was standing there, God gave me a prophecy. The Lord said the following thing. He said, the world draw from the wells of Africa for years. The world draw from the wells of Africa. The world. They use, the commodities of Africa for years. For years. They draw from our wells. And I released the word over these government officials, and I said to them, God's saying that it's time for Africa to draw from the wells of the world. It's time for us to access the wells of the world. The wealth of the world. There's one nation. And I said to the government officials that, I said to them, don't let borders scare you. We placed those borders and provinces and nations. We created it, not God. We put the limitations there. God's moving limitations, we put more limitations. God is setting us free, we put on bondage. That's how we respond. We have access to abundance. Abundance. I want to encourage you, if it's possible for you to be here for tomorrow morning's meeting, I want to give you 4 principles that Jesus lived by. I promise you, if you apply and live by those principles, your life will change completely. Completely. It is the way He functioned. It is the words, the things that He thought exactly. And we have, what's amazing to me is that Jesus came and He modeled that on earth. Because if He did it in heaven, we would have looked at it and said, oh, well, it's easy for Him, He's in heaven. But He came down to earth and He applied those principles on earth. Right here. He did it here. Because of that, it happened. I want to end with a scripture tonight. Galatians 6 verse 9. It says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest, if we do not give up. The promise is not connected to doing good, but to not giving up. But you get this. He's saying we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. So it means if someone is toiling for 99 years and they give up in the last year, they miss it. The promise is not connected to doing good, but not giving up, moving forward. So, as God is moving Bethlehem or Israel from this place to the promised land, we have a compass. It's called faith. And we live by that compass. Because there's these moments where you see that photo in your life and you're thinking, well, there's no way out of this. And God is saying to Israel, move on. Lord, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. Move on. But move on. Move on. And we don't realize that as we move on, we're busy moving into the promise. The promise is fixed. The promise is not going to come and find you where you are. You have to enter and you have to access that promise. You have to walk into what God has for you. So I want to finish this verse. Because he says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have the opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. There's certain principles that in the natural it's fixed, it's unchangeable. It's a principle that's set. In the natural there's a principle of gravity. You can have a car that has a V8 engine in it. I've got a V8 Jeep. You can have a powerful motor, a powerful engine, but it still applies the law of gravity. It's powerful, it sounds great, but it doesn't change the principle. Whatever goes up comes down. If I drive with it down a cliff, we're going to go down. It's a principle that's set. Nothing in the natural can keep it up, nothing. I can pray, I can fast, I can run around it, it's going to go down. It's a principle that's set there. That principle is set there and it will have the same result every time. The spiritual is principles. And that principle has the same effect or response every time. Not sometimes, every time. In the spiritual world, we have a principle that says, whatever a man sows, he will reap. And that principle is applied every time. It is not a spiritual principle that's like 1 out of 10. It's like gambling or something. That, well, every 9 times that you give, you're not going to get a return, but the 10th time something's going to happen. No. It's a principle that's set in the spiritual world, and that principle is connected to it, and it will have the same response every time. It's unchangeable. You can pray, you can fast, you can do whatever you want, it'll have that effect. As you release it, something will happen. I'm sharing this with you because it's a principle that's been set there. It's there. There's many of you that's sown seeds. It's done now. There's many forms, different types of sowing and giving. You know, we have time, we have energy. There's so many ways of giving that we sowing. Okay, and it will have the same effect every time. It will return, but we're expecting it. You know, a farmer doesn't sow into soil and say, well, I hope something comes up. Lord, it would be great if one of the 10 seeds that I sown actually works. No. The farmer has the intention or the motive. You know, he's applied all the principles that has been taught. He's prepared the ground. He's done everything. Every principle is applied. And now he sows into that and he expects a harvest. He expects it. He expects something is about to happen. He expects something is about to change. I'm sharing it with you because we need to have the expectancy in the good. People have more faith in the bad than in the good. They expect negative things to happen. They expect bad reports. We have to expect good reports. We have to expect phone calls that's coming in and it's going to change our lives. God's economy is not connected to culture or race. God is king. People cannot, if God can change Pharaoh's heart in Exodus, He can change it in 2017. He can change it. If God can renew His mind, God can do it. See, but to God, it is not about, He wants us to know and He wants us to find the source. He wants us to know Him. So Israel leaves Egypt and they're thinking that Pharaoh is their savior. As they lived, they had more faith in Pharaoh than in God. Really? They lived and they still referred to Pharaoh the whole time. Their reference was still Pharaoh. They said to Moses, Moses, Pharaoh treated us better than now. And God had to come and He had to help them to find the source. And that's why He comes there and He says, okay, I'm going to help. I'm going to teach you to be dependent on me. Dependent on me. I'm going to rain down, but you're only allowed to use what I gave you that day. There will be seasons and times in your life where God makes you dependent on Him again. And He provides daily for you. Don't see that as a curse. See that as a principle that God's teaching you. It's helping you to find a source. It's helping you to find your dependence. Because you've become dependent on plan B, dependent on Pharaoh, dependent on something that has treated you, terribly. You've been dependent on that thing. God's saying, no. You don't realize that thing has been destroying you. That thing has limitations. It looks great now, but it's empty. I'm the source. I'm your focus. I'm the source of life. If you live in my kingdom, you will have access to abundance every time. Not elke 5 keer as jy dit doen. Every time. Every time you pray, you will have access to the abundance. But it's not about the abundance. It is about you walking in responsibility and authority. It's you having the mindset of giving and not receiving. It's so much better to give than to receive. Now, when we bless, we are blessed. The person that's blessing is more blessed than the one receiving. The gratitude, what you receive back is so much more than the one that's receiving. When you give it, be in that position. But the majority of people are just saying, I need to receive, I need to receive, I need to receive. I'm sharing this with you because I believe in this church and in this community, God wants to raise up some givers. You see, in the Word, I want to end with this, He says. Because He gives, He supplies. Seed to the sower and bread to the eater. Okay? See, an eater can never expand. I can only eat so much bread, consume so much. I can use my stomach and expand, but just to a certain capacity. An eater can never expand, but a sower can expand. So God says, okay, He says, I give bread to the eater. I believe that every person that's sitting in this room is guaranteed one meal a day. By God. Guaranteed. I will give bread to the eater. You will have one meal a day to eat. I will give seed to the sower. You see, the eater can go from 1 meal to 2 meals to 3 meals to a capacity, and he can go any further. But a sower doesn't have a limitation. A sower's bonds can expand and expand and expand and expand. I'm sharing this with you because an eater mentality is a poverty mentality. A sower mentality is an abundance mentality. It's a life of fullness. I'm not saying that God doesn't want us to enjoy the fruit. Yes, He wants us to enjoy it. He's saying as much as you can. Enjoy it. But you're not allowed to keep back. You're not allowed to store that. Enjoy the benefits of my kingdom. But the focus is not you and your family alone, your future. The focus is everyone around you. I can assume that as Israel, as their tummies is filled up, eventually they couldn't eat anymore. So eventually the mothers and fathers stuff food down their children's mouths. And then they can't eat anymore, and they still have all this food left. And they're not allowed to keep it, so they're trying to find someone that can have another chicken breast. So suddenly their focus shifts from just their own lives to the community, to people around them, to those in need around them. They're not just looking down at their own feet and their own lives, they're looking up and they're thinking, who needs? Because there's abundance. There's more than enough. My tummy is full. Expansion. God wants to expand you to be a blessing to people around you. He wants you to move into places, and He wants your intention to be, Lord, to whom can I be a blessing? Show me, God, where can I sow? Show me, Lord, where's right? Not God, please, me. But to look, say, God, I want to be a vessel. Raise me up. Teach me. Put me in a position to bless others. To be a blessing to people. Wherever I go, help me to expand your kingdom and so the everyone. I want you to close your eyes and pray with me. I want to spiritually do something tonight. I want to take a step of faith. Just as God told Moses, He said, okay, I want you to do something. Stretch out your hand or your staff the Red Sea. I want you to do something. And he responded and he started to change. I want to do something tonight prophetically, and I believe that God will take us seriously. I want you to understand tonight, if I ask you to stand, don't stand because you're standing in front of me or someone that's sitting here. If you mean it with your heart, I want you to stand. Because what you're standing for now, God will keep you accountable for. Don't make promises to God. You can't keep them. If you mean it with your heart and you say, God, this is who I want to be, then I want you to stand. I want to make an outlook tonight, and I want to ask how many of you that's sitting in this room have a desire to say, Lord, I want to give a car. I want to give a money. I want to sow a house. God, put me in that position. Give me that capacity to be a blessing to others. If that is you, I want you to stand up. I would love to pray with you. And tonight, I'm taking a step of faith and saying, God, bless these people. Bless these people. Make their lives a channel to be a blessing to others. Use them as a community. Use them in South Africa. Father, I thank you, God, that what I prophesied that out of their hands, abundance will flow. Father, I prophesied that out of their hands, cars will flow. And millions will flow out of their hands. God, I pray these people that are standing here tonight, Lord, that houses and properties will be sold. People's mortgages or bonds will be settled out of their hands. Lord, I pray that you would use their lives to give you glory. Just as you used Pharaoh, an ungodly man, and you said, I will get glory out of his army. I ask God that you would use the righteous. If it's here tonight, you could use Pharaoh, who enslaved your people for 400 years. How much more can you use these people that stand? Father, I pray for testimonies that will come back of how you supernaturally provided. Supernaturally place them in a position to be a blessing. Just to give, just to let go. Not just have to have a mindset of, God, I need to pay off my debt, I need to pay my things, but to have this focus that, God, I'm aiming, I'm expecting to sow $1 million within a year. God, I have expectancy to give a car away a year. It doesn't matter what it is, but I want to start. I have expectancy to get to that level. I'm expecting to be in that position. I'm saving, not for my retirement. I'm saving and accumulating not for my benefit. I'm saving to be a blessing. I'm saving to prosper someone else. That my life can be an answered prayer to someone else. That's what I'm saving. That's what I'm aiming for. That's what I'm expecting. Father, I pray that you would come and renew their minds. Renew their minds. Renew their minds. Help them to have an understanding of abundance. Not to live from breakthrough or miracle to miracle, to live a life of abundance. A life of overflow. Overflow means that my capacity is full. I don't have any more bonds. I don't have any more space. My cup is full. My capacity, what I can handle, what I can receive, is full. My cup overflows. Overflows. It's more than enough. And this overflow starts to splash on people around me. It starts to benefit everyone around me. It starts to benefit your kingdom. It's more than enough. I call that into existence in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen, amen. You may be seated. Amen. You left up, sit. Thank you, Holy Spirit. It's so amazing. I got a revelation of this. We were in Israel, and we we eating with a Jewish family, and they did the Shabbat, the whole Shabbat thing. And then they have the process, there's a few who've done it before, they have the process where they have a cup. And then they pour this cup, but it runs over. So as they put the cup and it started to run over, I said, this is really messy, but that's the whole idea. When they're doing the Shabbat, it's a blessing, it's more than enough. It's to give you that realization of abundance. So it's they purposely let it run over. So you can see that manifestation of this. And that's why a poverty mindset says it's wasting. But a mindset of abundance says, maybe this from there's a lot more. And for them to do that, they must know something that I don't know, that I don't know. They must have access to something that I don't understand. They know abundance. They know the source. They know that the source cannot run dry. Cannot stop. Okay? Amen. But this should